Good evening, America. Hello, Chicago. And what's up, West Side? This is P. Ray of Black Excellence Hour, a show for people with high self esteem. You could have been doing anything on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, and you chose to come hang out with me today at Black Excellence Hour. And as always, I truly appreciate the company on our new platform, which is IntellectualRadio.com. Shout out to Earl. We are going to play that music while I set up my call queue because y'all know I'm new. So let's listen to Lift Every Voice and Sing just for a little while longer while we get the call queue set up. Thank you for calling College Studios.
To earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of bliss. Lift every voice and sing. Every as the listening skies.
All right, Earl, I'm ready. All right, and we are live again. This is P. Ray. I have a new call-in number because last week we were talking to each other and everybody said, P. Ray, I was trying to call you and I couldn't get in. So I came up with a solution. The call-in number is 773-345-9977. 773-345-9977. Jump in the call queue. I have a wonderful guest today, Miss Tracey Smodilla from the Parents Matters Coalition, and we are going to have a talk today about women. It is International Women's Month, and we are here to celebrate womanhood and femininity. But as we do with every single show, every single time, you guys know how this goes. We need to get a dose of self-esteem because this week, these people have been lying to us once again. All they want to do is come to Black people and say, they don't like you. They don't want you. The boogeyman is going to come and bite you on the ankles. And guess what, friends? That is a lie. That is a lie. The Democrats are running scared right now. They did not expect for our movement to catch on like it did. And ta-da! Here we are. It is time to go. And the man with the plan is Donald John Trump Sr., the 45th president, soon to be president number 47. Roll tape.
African Americans built this nation. You built this nation. You know, you're just starting to get real credit for that. Okay, I don't know if you know that. You're just starting to you built the nation. We all built it, but you were such a massive part of it. Bigger than you were given credit for. Does that make sense? Right? But through generations of blood, sweat, and tears, and you deserve a government that defends your interests, protects your families, and cares for our own citizens first. My administration is fighting with everyone and all our heart to reverse the pain inflicted by Democrat leaders and to deliver hope and opportunity and prosperity for all Americans, but for African American communities all throughout our land. And our agenda is lifting up citizens of every background, race, religion, color, and creed. But while we are fighting every day to build up our nation, the far left only wants to wreck, ruin, and destroy our nation.
All right. Again, that was Donald John Trump Sr. giving us a dose of self-esteem and a very real fact, which is the left is trying to wreck, ruin, and destroy our nation, and we just cannot have that. This is our country. We are as American as sweet potato pie. We are at home. Before we get into the meat of the show, if you're watching on the Facebook Live page, be sure to share the live. We're also live on YouTube at Intellectual Radio, and we are about to rock out. I'm trying to figure out more ways to get us on more platforms. P. Ray is doing her best. Shout out to everybody who prays for me. Also, shout out to Roman Morrow for making me this Austin hoodie. It says Austin. It says abundant, unique, soulful, top notch, innovative, and needed. And it says I am Austin, and it has the Austin Town Hall symbol. Shout out to Roman. If it were not for Roman Morrow, I would not be here at Intellectual Radio because he brought me on his show to talk to me about why are we doing Black Chicago for Trump. Speaking of, I also want to let everyone know that we are still hosting the Chicago Red events, the Chicago Red meetings, rather. Chicago Red meets every Thursday at 7 p.m. at 5834 West Augusta. Again, every Thursday at 7 p.m., we are meeting at 5834 West Augusta, Chicago, Illinois, 60651. We are there to get our plan together. We have launched the Go Red Pack. We are popping. It is now serious. It is very, very serious because it is game time. Our goal, again, is to turn the city red because we know that the blues have given us the blues. Oh, and aren't you tired of talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again to the same people? Nope. We just got to leave them alone and we're going to get away from them. And so the planning and plotting has begun. Again, every Thursday, 5834 West Augusta. We have a huge, diverse group of people who show up every week, and it is time to get to work. I think I've done all the housekeeping. Oh, one last thing. I announced that I wanted to run for school board, and then they come up with this thing in the school in the state house where they're like, "Oh, we're going to put all these specifications in so that people will have a more difficult time to run for school board." What's that about? Why? I'm starting to take this personally, y'all. I just want to save my community, and y'all just keep on throwing these landmines on top of me, and I keep on jumping over them, just like Mario. I love Mario Brothers. I digress. Let's get to the meat of the show. Today's show is about, again, feminism. Feminism has really taken a lot of space in the Black world because we had the feminist movement moving at the same time as the civil rights movement. They kind of merged together, and then it allowed white women and immigrants to snatch all of the spoils of the civil rights movement for themselves while the Negroes suffered. If we look at affirmative action, it was actually the Negro who benefited the least. And so that's why we're again happy that it's gone. But I was watching the State of the Union and I was watching Jim Crow Joe lie and get angry. We're not going to get into that because nobody's paying that any of attention. He will not be the president next year if they don't cheat. If this is just a full-fledged fair election, Jim Crow Joe is done. So I'm not even going to sit here and try to repeat anything that he said because it's irrelevant to what I'm about to say right now. Well, maybe a little relevant because he is the last living Dixiecrats. If you don't know what a Dixiecrats is, the Dixiecrats were a political party that broke off from the Democrat Party, and they were super duper uber 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 racist like Confederates. And so they ran a candidate for president in 1960, and that was Strom Thurmond. He lost, and then the Dixiecrats split. Some went to the Republican Party, so this is why you have like Strom and those kind of people, Barry Goldwater. Then some went to the Democrat Party, which is how you had Senator Robert Byrd. Well, in their little Dixiecrat crew, Jim Crow Joe was their little homie. And now he's an old man, and all the original Dixiecrats are dead. So he's literally the last living Dixiecrat, which is why they are pushing this on us. If you watch the State of the Union, you would see that the sea of white outfits was very, very noticeable because the Democratic Congresswomen used the opportunity to send a message. They announced that they would wear white and wear special pins that read "Fighting for Reproductive Freedom" to the event. They said, "Our message is clear. Women must be able to access health care they need to control their own lives and futures," DWC Chair Lois Frankel said in a statement. That means women, not politicians, should be in charge of whether, when, or how to start or grow their families. The group has long donned white, which is a nod to the color of the suffrage movement, and they have an annual event to raise awareness on issues concerning women's rights. And so this year they are focused on reproductive rights. And they're putting all of this in the vein of the over the fact that Roe v. Wade was overturned, and they want to make sure that they're able to codify what they're calling a woman's right. Now, everyone who listens to this show already knows that P. Ray is all the way 10 toes down pro life, because we know that Margaret Sanger was a real live eugenicist, a real live racist, and she was a member of the WKKK. What is the WKKK? The WKKK is a group called Women's KKK. And they were affiliated, but they were a separate group from the KKK. So it's not necessarily that these were the wives of these men who founded this little auxiliary group. They were their own separate group, and they courted members through empowering feminism. Ding, ding, ding. Now, the reason that they formed is because after the right to vote was given to all Americans, it excluded women of every race. And so the white women were saying, wait a minute, I'm a white woman. How does this black man have more rights in the society than me? And so they created an organization called Women's Ku Klux Klan. And guys, these people were wild, wild, wild women. So they didn't do like the lynchings and the burning the crosses or anything like that. None of that. That was not what they did. Instead, they focused on femininity and womanhood. One that was imaginary, and one was a concession of the reality that they were living. They said that white Protestant women were innocent, virtuous creatures whose reason, I'm sorry, they were taught that white Protestant women were virtuous creatures who were meant to serve men. And then men in return would protect the sexually appealing ladies from people who were trying to rape them, like black men who could not help but desire them. Okay. So they're there to protect the virtue of white women. Now, what made them very unique is the fact that they were again focused on not making sure that they got their rights, but to make sure that their rights were above those of black men. The way that they did their warfare was through whisper campaigns. And the whisper campaigns meant that they would go around and they would spread these rumors in the community about people to socially ostracize them and kick them out of the community. This was canceling people before canceling was a thing. That's why we see all of these progressives and all these Democrats trying to cancel people and get all in their business and ruin their reputations. That, friends, is a Ku Klux Klan behavior. Canceling people is a Klan behavior. It started with the women of the KKK. Also, so when they're going through what they're doing, I'm going to tell you about some of the things that they did. So they had something where they would get wayward husbands, and so in 1924 they paraded around with clubs, and any woman who said that her husband was mistreating him, those women would go to them with their clubs and they would beat them up for being mean to the women of the WKKK. So they were like a real live gang. They also not only did not like black people. I know, isn't that crazy? They also didn't like black people, but they didn't like Catholics. They didn't like Jewish people. So they were doing all of these things to all of the people in their communities, again, to keep them white Protestant areas, to keep the homogeneous nature of their small towns. When they went and they interviewed some of the women of the KKK in the 80s, a lot of women said it was just a celebration and a way to grow up. And this was just the way for us to get together and take care of ourselves and make ourselves beautiful or needed in the society. This is where it gets tricky. And this is why it's a problem that these women are wearing white. Number one, not only did they get the social attention that they were looking for, but they also, their goal was to smash their men out because they saw their men as the center of their existence. I'm sorry, they saw the men as the center of the people who were hurting them the most. So what they did was some women cut their hair in bob haircuts. Some women divorced their husbands in order to go join this group. And they started to tell the women that the men were not needed because they had all of the power that they needed to acquire, and thus they should push the men out of their lives and live together within these feminine groups together. So when we talk about feminism and how it's gone to be or grown, evolved to become this anti-male group or anti-male movement, again, friends, all of that started in the Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan, Ku Klux Klan, Ku Klux Klan. Also, they would put on these white outfits and walk in the street to show that they were dedicated to keeping America white, which is why these white women were wearing these very white crisp outfits in public walking down the street. Now, what they also did is because they were women, they wanted to control the anatomy of women. And that meant controlling and diminishing the anatomy of Black women, because again, this is the KKK. So they pushed birth control, they pushed abortion, they pushed family planning, they pushed all of these things not to make themselves better, but to control the birth rates of Black women. This is why Margaret Sanger was a lead speaker at WKKK meetings around the country. All 50 states had WKKK memberships in the early 1900s, and Margaret went to see as many as she could. And she promised them that she was going to push this abortion movement through the Negro preachers in Harlem and the politicians, and she was going to get the Black birth rate down on behalf of the WKKK. And now we had these women, Black women even, sitting on national TV watching the State of the Union in their Klan uniform, pushing Klan agendas. Come on, y'all. We got to read and we got to be better than this, because this is a very long term plan to not only stop our birth rate, but eradicate us using our women. And we got Black women pushing for it. So, again, the call in number is 773-345-9977. So, the attack on women has moved from outside the womb to now being codified within the law. We are seeing it in sports, in the classroom, which is why I have Miss Tracey Smodilla from the Parents Matter Coalition here to tell us exactly what are you guys doing to kind of slow this down.
Well, first, thanks a million for having me on, P. Ray. This is really, really exciting that we have an opportunity to speak to not just parents with school kids or minor children, but really, I think there's a bigger historical context to all of this. And I appreciate what you've brought to light, particularly with, some organizations that were pretty well organized, going back over 100 years ago. And I think that we can agree that when you talk about the WKKK, I mean, you're really looking at the original Mean Girls out there.
Mhm.
And again, if you want to fast forward another 40 years ago, I mean, these were the precursors to what we would have thought of as being the radical feminists.
Yes. This is
The Erica Jongs of the world, the National Organization of Women, and all under the pretext that they thought that they were really fairly clandestine in their messaging. I mean, this really wasn't about empowering all women. This was about controlling women. And I think that as a woman, as somebody who really appreciates her femininity and and wants all women to experience that, I find it to be pretty egregious. I think it becomes even more egregious when we think about this is actually being imposed upon our kids, and specifically the Parents Matter Coalition is focusing on government overreach and cultural overreach as it relates to minor children. And in the state of Illinois, those are defined as kids that are, 18 and under. And we've got, unfortunately, people in high places in Springfield that are not only redefining what a woman is, either through the trans movement or certainly by calling children as young as 12 years old mature minors and giving them the opportunity to have autonomy over their healthcare decisions. And that would include seeking abortion or gender affirming care. So that really goes back to what you were talking about before, some of these policies and how they actually impact birth rates. We know gender affirming care. There's an alarming rate of infertility that goes on with that. Certainly, we can look at abortion. I mean, children now in the state of Illinois can, children can seek an abortion without the knowledge or the consent of their parents. And when we think about Planned Parenthood, probably the largest not NGO, largest 501c3 in the United States, and they are in the business of exterminating children, preborn or otherwise. I really can't think of a more horrific industry. And this really is an industrial complex when you think about taking the life of a preborn child up to the point of birth. A full term 9-month-old baby can be exterminated by Planned Parenthood.
Correct.
It gets even worse when you think about that could be your 14-year-old daughter who perhaps hid an unplanned pregnancy from you. And she has been presented to Planned Parenthood for a surgical, chemical, or a pharmaceutical abortion. She comes home from school. Hey, Mom. Hey, honey, how was your day? Fine, I'm going to bed. Well, a few hours later, you learn that your daughter is hemorrhaging or she's perhaps running a fever because infection has set in. There are a number of bills that have been introduced in Springfield that continue to further this. It's not just the overreach, but again, it's the assault on women, particularly our very young women, our very vulnerable women. So I really appreciate you bringing the conversation into the forefront.
Oh, you're welcome. We have to take this very seriously because this is a direct assault on the future. They're, attacking us via the womb, and they're doing it using Klan behaviors, acting out the Klan agenda. And it's really upsetting to me in a way because we have all of these people who claim to be intellectuals and they're representing the intellectual class and they love Black people, but then they're using their intellectual capital to push a Klan agenda.
Well, yeah, I mean that's pretty evident. I mean, and especially when you all you have to do is follow the money sometimes.
Hmm.
We look at a number of the people that we have in the state legislature that are continue to push these agendas. I mean, these are people of color.
Correct.
And when you look at the statistics, it is, you have more brown and Black children that are being eliminated by organizations like Planned Parenthood than you do white kids. And so I think that one, it needs to be the question needs to be raised, and then one of the things we do at Parents Matter Coalition is we really want to talk about education and advocacy, particularly as it relates to very specifically to what we're calling legislative literacy. And we are asking people to rather than scream about what's going on in their echo chambers or pounding away on their keyboards complaining about what's going on, become very, very curious as to why this is happening, particularly in your community. Be very curious about who you're electing to office. Pay attention to their legislative records. And when I talk about a legislative record, I'm not talking only about what they voted for, but were they sponsoring something that would be an affront to your family values, the values of your community. And then when I talk about following the money, it's not very difficult to look up, who they're getting their funding from specifically. And Planned Parenthood, Personal PAC, these are organizations that have poured millions and millions of dollars into the campaigns of Democrat legislators who pretend, or they pretend to care about the communities that they're supposed to be serving, and in fact, it's a diametrically different story when we see and we can continue to talk about the advent of government overreach on families and Planned Parenthood, and our governor saying that when he talks about abortion services, when he talks about abortion for all, he means all. That means your kid. That means your 13 or 12, 14-year-old daughter.
Registration at 10.
That's it. So, and again, we know what happens in a pregnancy for a child that young is, in my opinion, there's something else going on. We need to make sure that we are caring for that child. But it gets even worse when the law now states, thanks to Governor Pritzker in 2021, when he repealed the Parental Notification Act of abortion for minors, when he repealed that, he knew what he was doing. He knew that this was going to continue to fund the industrial abortion complex. He knew it was preying upon Black and brown children's, even more egregiously. So the point is that this is a man who is now, when he talks about abortion for all, he means your child. And again, he's repealed a law that says parents have to be aware of this or should know about it. There are additional bills that have been introduced that will continue to infringe upon family rights. And I think particularly in some communities that I would identify as being at risk, there's something else going on. But when you think about laws that are being passed and laws that are being considered, that the state of Illinois would hold harmless anybody that performed an abortion service on your minor child without your consent, and something went sideways with that child's health as a result of this. The state of Illinois is saying they're going to hold that butcher harmless. I have a problem with that.
Mhm.
I have a real problem with that. Not only that, but now you've got Planned Parenthood, and we know that abortion services in some states surrounding Illinois have become more restrictive. And again, this is not a question about a woman's right to choose or not. I'm
Correct.
pro-life. We were talking about minor children,
The children,
minor
the
children.
babies.
So now,
Mhm.
now we've got Planned Parenthood on the record, on film, trafficking kids over state lines into the state of Illinois to get to abortions. We're looking at a bill that has been introduced during this legislative session that the state of Illinois would not hold a trafficker responsible. Yeah, or a criminally liable for bringing a
Wow.
baby over a state line into Illinois to get an abortion. So when you think about everybody's in their echo chambers, maybe they're being more public about this. When we think about human trafficking, what we're setting Illinois up as is really is it's beyond being a tourist abortion state.
Mhm.
We are basically creating new clients for Planned Parenthood. They're young, perhaps they've been trafficked. And when I'm talking about trafficked, I'm not necessarily talking about only children that have come across the
Pimping.
U.S. border. It's
Yes.
pimping. You're
Mhm.
absolutely right. You've got, again, families in desperate situations. I grew up in a very, very poor household. You name it, you just pick a social ill out of the hair. We had it going on. It was, addiction, violence, divorce, neglect. I saw it all. I am grateful that I was able to pull myself out of that. But I know that I was in a very, very high risk family, and I know there are more kids out there like that. And what we're doing at Parents Matter Coalition, again, we are beyond the petition signature petition we have going on right now. This is really about teaching people to um, put their anger and their concern into action, become curious, become literate in what legislation looks like. Call out people. I've got a good friend. He's a Latino pastor up on the Northwest Side, and he's asked me to go down to a neighborhood on South, I think, Kilbourne tomorrow to talk to parents who are concerned about restrooms now. Restrooms where little boys are going to be allowed into the private spaces of little girls,
Mhm.
and the reality is that you might have a bill for that maybe it dies in committee one year, but you can bet that the other chamber in the state legislature is going to pick up that same language the next year. And I've got evidence of it right now. As a matter of fact, that's what I'll be talking to these folks tomorrow on. But again, you go back to this. I mean, so you're targeting women with abortion. You're targeting younger children with abortion. You're targeting younger women with a trans ideology that will likely leave them sterile, particularly with complete hysterectomies, which we know are irreversible. you can sterilize a child just with puberty blockers and, not even go the route of a full surgical transition.
And the
So,
children can request those themselves, correct?
yeah, unfortunately, children as young as 12 have complete autonomy over their medical records. And so when you have that, they can make their own medical decisions. Again, they're framing this term mature minor, which is really pretty bizarre, particularly when you think about other legislation that we have in the state of Illinois. And I'm going to go back to that again. A minor in the state of Illinois is defined as a child under the age of 18 years old. I will add, just to be very clear, we do have emancipation laws here in Illinois. So there are some cases where a child as young as 16 or 17 can become emancipated from their parents, for example, or a guardian. There's a legal process for that. They would be the exception. But for the sake of this discussion, and really for the majority of kids, under 18, you are a minor child. So now let's go back to the discussion of a child seeking gender affirming care or seeking an abortion. Again, they can do that without their parents' knowledge or consent. Well, I find it astonishing that a 14-year-old cannot get her ears pierced without parental consent.
She can't go to the pumpkin patch.
That-
If the mom didn't sign the field trip, she cannot. I mean, if she didn't sign that
Yeah.
form, she cannot get on the bus.
Yeah, well, in the parental consent form for ear piercing for a minor is at the Illinois Department of Public Health. You can look it up, and it is an 8.5 by 11 consent form, and 2/3 of it is the warnings and the red flags and the dangers of having a body part or an oral cavity pierced. I mean, I know a handful of teenagers that have got their tongues pierced. It's like, not for me, but you know what? If your mom signed the parental consent form, there you go. Yeah. So you have that. It's like, parental consent for ear piercing. The other thing is for tattoos, a person under the age of 18 years old cannot lawfully be on the site of a tattoo parlor.
Correct.
But you can go have, your healthy breasts removed, without your parents' consent. You can have a vaginoplasty if you're a man or young man that wants to transition. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And there's no danger, warning around that. So this is not just, again, the erasure of women. It's also the erasure of our young men. I think we have a heavy culture, particularly in government, that is preying on our families, and they are starting to get them younger and younger. If you can, and the reality is that if you look at the transgender industry, if you can start to get these kids very young and start them on puberty blockers while they're still in grammar school, you have now got them locked in for life, and the cost.
Keep going.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Wow. If you'd like to join the conversation, Q, the number is 773-345-9977. I have Tracey Smodilla in the building from the Parents Matters Coalition, and she is telling us about how the state of Illinois is actively trying to prevent our children from giving birth or having more people. They're trying to smash out the fertility of our people, which again, my friends, is a agenda item of the WKKK. Wearing white, WKKK. Margaret Sanger, WKKK. Planned Parenthood, WKKK. I'm not making this up. If you are new to this show or old to this show, I do my research before I run my mouth, because my goal is not to push an agenda, but to tell you what's going on. We have a call in the queue. Welcome to Black Excellence Hour.
Thank you, P. Ray. And this is Dennis, and let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Okay, here's the thing. Planned Parenthood or abortion, transgender, LGBTQ, puberty blocker, all those things. You know what all those things have in common?
What?
Genocide. extermination. So that's the whole part. That's their whole plan. Now look at this. You got Joe Biden. Now I have to really drink to watch the State of the Union Thursday, so you won't have to see right. So he was trying to push Roe versus Wade back into the federal case. So now here's one thing Joe Biden failed to understand, because he's too old to remember himself on ice cream, is that he's a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. We don't believe in those things. So the problem is that they contradict everything what they stand for. So now they want to target not only our children, they mainly want to target little girls. Why they folks targeting the black and brown, I don't know, but they don't have Planned Parenthood over there in Eagle Pass near the border. Why these illegal aliens bringing all these kids and they pregnant and stuff? They're not going to do that. They're targeting our babies and stuff. Now, here's the thing. Now, I'm going to ask a question, but I want to make this statement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about a woman's right, because I can't speak for a woman. I'm not a woman. But when they ask me, do women have rights, I counteract the question, should they have responsibility?
Thank you, Dennis.
Now,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, now here's the question. If somebody say, well, they do an abortion because they're a victim of a rape, what's the answer should be?
Tell us what it is. Dennis?
No, I'm asking the question. I'm asking the question. I'm trying to figure out. Somebody asked me a question. I want to know what the answer should be.
I know people who were born as a result of rape, and those lives matter. I'm happy those people were born. That's what I tell them. Are we saying that we should take those people and shoot them in the head and throw them in the lake? No, they deserve to be alive. And we want to help the victim, which is both the woman and the child. That's what you tell them. Tell them we want to help the victims, which are the woman and the child. And that's it. That way we're not blaming anybody. But, again, we know that we're pro-life, but the focus of today's show is to talk about what they're pushing on the kids. It's about the babies, you see, because this is starting much younger than it was before. When I was in high school, to your point, abortions were $50. So I remember a very specific day. I was hanging out with one of my girlfriends, and we agreed that we were going to meet downtown. This is when when State Street was actually State Street. And we're going to go down there, go to Forever 21, and then go to Giordano's. So we go shopping, we go to Giordano's. I said, girl, what did you do today? She said, girl, let me tell you, I woke up and looked at this man's phone. We were like 19 or 20 years old, okay? Definitely not 21. Girl, I looked at this man's phone and I saw he was texting this girl, and I said, oh no. I grabbed his money. I went and got an abortion. Then I went and got my nails done. And then I met you down here. And I'm like, what? And she like, yeah, what? Nobody got time for that. So it was so normalized that she just threw it into her daily schedule because it was just $50. And that's what everybody would say. If someone saw you pregnant, they would say, what, you don't got $50? So it was normalized to us as teenagers. And now I have women who are like myself in our mid 30s, and they're kind of feeling those things because they got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 abortions by the time they were 25, because it was promoted to us as teenagers as being just $50. You could go, it was cheaper to get an abortion than it was to get your hands and feet done. So that's what we're pushing. And they've taken it even further because it's not $50. It's free now. And anybody who wants to do it can do it. Back then, you had to find somebody that's, kind of play on the phone for you and pretend to be your mom. But now you don't even have to take that step.
Well, I'm going to say it's not free because taxpayers are picking it up. So,
true.
And to our caller, what I'll say is that Senate Bill 3316, introduced by the wonderful Sarah Feigenholtz. I think this is the right one. Anyway, w- w- forgive me, it may not be her. Anyway, there's a bill that's been introduced that will actually allow for non-citizens to receive abortion services. And again, that would be all non-citizens, meaning girls. And again, when I just want to, you brought up Eagle Pass. I just want to bring up that we have 85,000 missing children that
Yes.
have come over the border. So again, I'm very, very concerned about what's happening to these young kids who are likely being swept up into child sex trafficking.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
773-345-9977, 773-345-9977. Also to Dennis's point about Eagle Pass, I was in a Twitter space. Follow me at PRayBEH on Twitter. But I was on this Twitter space and there was a white woman in the room. And she was going on and on about how she was upset that all of the abortion clinics were in black areas and none were in white areas. And she wished that there were more abortion clinics in white areas because when she needed an abortion, she was on an island and she had to go and travel to a black area to get it. And so what I said to her is, come grab ours. You can have the one on Chicago Avenue. You can have that one right now. The whole staff, let's put it in your suburb because we don't want so many over here. So, I mean, it's crazy because I'm like, who asks for that? Who says, well, I wish we had more? It's weird.
Yeah. more abortion clinics, because 17 Planned Parenthood centers in the state of Illinois is just not enough. What's interesting is one of the largest one is in just over the river from Missouri, which has got more restrictive laws for abortions. East St. Louis, just all you have to do is jump the Mississippi. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are you guys fighting back against these laws? What are you doing down at the State House?
So we're not working specifically. Oh, strike that. I mean, we're reaching out to legislators. And I just want to give a special shout out to Representative Tim Ozinga, who's out of the south suburbs. He's down out of Will County, the Mokina area. He has introduced what we are referring to as repeal the repeal. So there is a House bill that he has introduced. We hope that it gets some traction. And so repeal the repeal, meaning he would be repealing the repeal of the Parental Notification Act for abortion, basically reinstating the original law from 1995, where parents needed to be notified if their minor child was seeking an abortion services. So we thank Representative Ozinga for putting that forth, and we are very prayerful that it gets some movement. Very, very difficult being in the super minority down there. But again, I think if we talk more about that. But right now, the Parents Matter Coalition has a signature petition drive. It's called the Right to Parent Ballot Initiative. We are in the process of collecting 500,000 qualified signatures from registered Illinois voters. We hope to have those all in by April 15th. And this what we are hopeful to do is put a question of public policy on the November 2024 ballot, and that would read, shall the written consent from a minor's parent or guardian be required before any entity, person, clinic, or school can provide a minor under the age of 18 years any non-emergency medical procedure, medication, pharmaceutical, or any gender modification procedure, gender identification, gender affirming counseling, or gender therapy? Pretty common sense question.
But do you think that our governor, I mean, because we're working with the super minority,
right?
What hurdles can, I could just see them not pushing this, only because Pritzker is king of gender affirming. His cousin had the clinic down at Laurie's that I believe that's the reason that they're tearing up the hospital right now. They're like, oh, they tore up the servers at Laurie's Children's Hospital. This is an attack on children. I'm like, I think they're attacking that clinic, that sterilization clinic up there. So the governor is really pushing this, and it's a part of his agenda. How are you going to push this referendum through?
So I want to be really clear about this. This is again, this is what's called a ballot. This is an advisory question of public policy. This is
Mhm.
not a ballot referendum, so it's not
Okay.
going to change any laws. But and the reason we did it was severalfold. We'll start with the fact that one. If we were going to go through ballot referendum, that would have had to get on the ballot. We would have had to have gone through the legislative process,
Mhm.
and we know that was not going a question like this, a referendum request, was not going to make it out of committee, let alone to the floor for a vote. So, a ballot advisory question is really the best gauge of public opinion that we have. And what's been great about this is it has allowed us to start an awareness campaign immediately. We were really shocked to find the number of people that were not aware that parents were not to be notified if their
Yeah.
minor child. I mean,
Mhm.
it is shocking. As a matter of fact, last Sunday I was one of our coalition partners. We were having an open house up in Streamwood, Illinois,
Mhm.
and the chief of staff for Fred Crespo came in. He's the House representative, and I was speaking to his wife, and this woman, she's the wife of Fred Crespo's chief of staff. She was not aware that parents did not have to be notified for a child seeking an abortion. And yeah, we were very happy. She picked up our petitions and
Uh-huh.
a number of our flyers that was outlining some of this legislation. So a little awkward moment for the chief of staff, but we were very, very blessed to have his wife in there who, yeah, I did not want to be at that dinner table.
How do you all plan to bring this to the Black community, specifically in Chicago? Because I remember I was talking about this at the nail shop. And when I was talking about it, everybody was like, girl, what? And then even the ladies who were doing our nails, were communicating in Vietnamese, like, wait, what is she saying? Is this serious? So all of the mothers were like, who voted for this? Who told them to do this? How did we miss this? What is going on? Why would someone do something like this? And I believe that they're able to do these things because of the ignorance. And when they push it, they have Black women wearing white, saying we need this, but they're not talking about how it harms children. So, do you guys have a game plan for Chicago? Because I heard you speak of Streamwood.
So we've been launched in the city of Chicago. We've certainly reached out to the Black community. Co-founder Jeannie Ives has reached out to several of the Black pastors. I've reached out to Pastor David Lowry from the
Mhm.
South Side as well, and we believe that we are going to start to get some traction and really mobilizing this through the Black faith community.
Mhm.
So far, we've had tremendous success mobilizing the Latino community. We hosted, and again, just great events, great traction with our Hispanics. The Mama Bears are uh, r- hot over this.
So I think we might have a little problem with the Black preachers, and I'm gonna tell you why. So no, because I try.
Well,
No, I gotta tell this story
you-
because it
I,
is election season. And shout
yeah.
out to Danny Davis. Be sure to vote for Danny Davis. If you don't pull that Republican ballot, but we're telling everybody pull it. I love the congressman. We can't say anything about the congressman. I love him. However, he had a breakfast on the west side of Chicago at Pastor Johnny Miller's church. And so I went because, these are my people. I was raised in this office. So this was just a way for me to get a free breakfast and say what's up to my congressman. It's a faith leaders breakfast. So the governor came, the pastors are there. It's all these West Side glitterati people. And they were like, okay, time for questions. So I raised my hand and they said, choose her. She's on the radio. So JB's like, oh my God, yeah, that's my station. What's your question? So I said, Mr. Governor, thank you for picking me. You guys just repealed the Parental Notification Act, which means that girls as young as 10 years old can go get free abortions without their mother being called in the state of Illinois. That same little girl could not go to the pumpkin patch. They couldn't even give her an aspirin for a headache without someone shining a sheet of paper. But now little girls can do this, which means that little girls who live in situations where men are molesting them can get them pregnant over and over and over again. And then she'll go get an abortion over and over and over again. And nobody will tell her mother and nobody will know what's going on until she's at home in a puddle of blood. Mr. Governor, can you explain to these pastors why you did that? And he's like, we did it so that we could protect the children, but all right, we gotta go. And then he just rolled his cell phone out the basement of the church and like really got out of there. And the press conference was over. And people were like, why you do that, P. Ray? And I'm like, no, this is the preachers. The preachers have to know this. And I told the
Amen.
preachers that you guys have to get this message out to your
Amen.
congregation, because all of the mothers, daddies, aunties, uncles, deacons, prayer warriors, praise team, choir member, and seat members want to know this information. And if you guys know this as pastors, then you have a duty to protect the families in the church. Do you know those same pastors continue to promote JB and endorse JB and take pictures with JB and tell their flocks to vote for JB? So that's why my
Yeah.
question is, how do you overcome this already corrupted relationship that they have with the governor?
Well, I think with leadership, I mean, that's really got to be. I think there's got to be a pretty profound period of self reflection. I mean, with
Mhm.
God on that.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go back to that because I do want to address something that's really important. Because again, you know, with the governor saying that we want to protect children, and I think they want to stand behind a conflated issue of children that have been
Abused.
abused. Correct. So here's the deal: you have a child that's been sexually abused. A pregnancy occurs. That child is now taken to an abortion clinic without parental consent. There's an abortion that's performed. That child continues to be abused, whether it's by a family member or whatever. The reality is that when we're not talking about it, when parents aren't involved, you're allowing the re-victimization of a child.
Yes.
You are telling that child you aren't worth getting intervention. You are
Advocacy.
not worth being advocated for. That's
Mhm.
exactly right. So I find it very disingenuous that the leader of the state of Illinois would talk about protecting children when he's just opening the door for re-victimization of a child, and it's got to stop. And I will tell this to the entire faith community. God is watching. God is watching. So whatever has come into your church, and I'm going to say infected it or infiltrated it, if it's a party, if it's money, you're going to stand before God on this. So whatever you're getting that is making you feel a little bit better for this very, very short time you're here, you are going to answer to somebody. It's not going to be to the Parents Matter Coalition. It's not going to be to the state legislature. It may not even be to law enforcement. But you're going to be answering to the ultimate authority, and it's not looking really good if you continue to turn your head and ignore the problem because you think that somebody else is providing your house of worship or your flock with something that you think somebody else can provide that God won't or isn't capable of doing. And you're deceiving yourself and you're deceiving these kids.
Wow. Thank you.
I got to tell the truth here. And I'm going to tell you that the Hispanic community, I think, was somewhat hesitant. They're on board. 3 weeks ago, we did a 4-city, 3-day press tour.
Mhm.
We launched in Chicago in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood.
Mhm.
It's fantastic. We had over 160 people show up on President's Day, 10 o'clock in the morning. 71 pastors from the Latino community. They are mobilizing their churches. I had one pastor tell me when we presented the facts to him, he said, I should be crawling to the cross. He's begging for forgiveness for not being aware of this, for being more concerned about his flock within the 4 walls than what might be happening to the most tender and the most vulnerable of his flock outside of those 4 walls. So they're moving. Praise
And
God.
amen. And if people wanted to get involved, how can they contact you?
So we do have a website. It's www.parentsmattercoalition.org. At our website, you can learn more about what we're doing to protect not just parents' rights, but really parents as the arbiters and the ultimate protectors of their children. So by proxy, we're protecting kids as well. You can download our petition. You can get some really great information about the actual laws or non-regulatory information that's been really enforced upon parents and their kids today. And we'll continue to update that information. But we think that, as I alluded to earlier, legislative literacy is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to an organization called illinoissunshine.org, look up your state legislator or perhaps, somebody else that's been elected, you can see where some of their money is coming from. You can look on the State Board of Elections and look up they're called their D1s. You can see where the money's coming from.
All right. Well, we are at the end of the show, which means, Mr. Winfrey, we at the end of the show. Oh, is it? Oh, thank you. We are at the end of the show. The music is playing. That means that we are at the end of the show. We thank Miss Tracey Smodilla for coming here from the Parents Matters Coalition. We gotta save the children. Do not let this government pervert us. And remember, the way that we're going to save ourselves is through Chicago Red. Be sure to come to the Chicago Red meeting this Thursday, 5834 West Augusta, 7 p.m. Because if we don't fight back, they're going to tell us what to do. And we love our kids much more than they do. This is P. Ray of Black Excellence Hour, and I will see you on Thursday. Mwah. Ciao. See y'all later.